All right, guys, Brandon Odo here. I want to talk a little bit about this question of tachypnea in shock. I think to understand this, you really got to get at the underlying physiology. So starting with a stripped down version of the standard ICU hypoxia lecture, usually you first go through the sort of obscure causes of hypoxia, things like low atmospheric pressures of oxygen if you're standing on Mount Everest, things like that. Not things we see a lot. The vast majority of clinical hypoxemia we see is due to shunt physiology, okay? So let me show you how that works. This is a stripped down model of the lung with just two lung units, okay? 1 and 2 alveoli, and then the capillaries coming in. If you breathe in room air, and you're gonna get this by the alveolar gas equation, which I am not gonna go through, but what you'll find is that by the time you humidify it fully and you exchange your carbon dioxide, you're gonna have an alveolar content of oxygen of about 105, okay? Same on both sides of our simple lung. What about the circulatory side? If we are coming in here into our right heart with deoxygenated blood, we're gonna be coming in with a PVO2 of, let's say, about 40, okay? As they pass through these capillaries and exchange with the alveoli, it's a very efficient process. So they're going to come out with a PaO2 of about 100, okay? Very close to 105. The only reason there's any difference is because VQ matching is not perfect and things like that. All right. Now, as we mix these two sides together, again, in our lung we only have two alveoli, 100 mixes with 100 and you get 100, right? Great. Now, you know that most of the oxygen in the lungs is not dissolved in solution. It's bound to hemoglobin, right? So to complete this picture, we gotta say, not only are we coming in with a oxygen tension of 40, we're coming in with a saturation of, well, about 70%, right? You're gonna exchange your oxygen and you're gonna come out saturating about 100%, right? 100, 100 mixed together and you have 100. So you're gonna end up with a final SaO2 of 100%. Great. Now, let's think about a shunted lung. What's gonna happen here is you have a functional lung unit over here. You're breathing in room air and you're still gonna end up with a PaO2 of 105. But let's block off this alveolus, okay? This is full of pus, or the airway is obstructed by a mucus plug, or is atelectatic. These are the things we see every day: pneumonia, ARDS, CHF, atelectasis. What it means is this is not participating in gas exchange, so there's essentially no oxygen. It's not actually zero, it's just gonna equilibrate with the blood until there's no gradient anymore. So let's say now we have a PaO2 of basically 40, right? So now we're gonna come in with a PVO2 of 40 and a SAT of 70%. Here we're still gonna exchange normally, right? So we're gonna come out at 100 and 100%. Over here, we're not gonna exchange at all. So we're gonna come out still at 40 and still at 70%. As these two sides mix together, we're gonna get a final arterial oxygen content that's just an admixture of the two. So just using a simple math here, we're gonna end up with a PaO2 of what, 70, and a saturation of 85, right? So the important lesson of this is that it almost doesn't matter what's coming in and out if you have this shunt, because none of that gas is getting here anyway. So let's say, your first reaction is gonna be, why don't we increase the FiO2? And we can increase the big AO2 over here to 200, 300. You just put a ton of oxygen in there. That's not gonna affect this side, however, because none of that oxygen is getting in here. So even if we end up with a PO2 over 300 over here, and even if we can get a dissolved oxygen tension of, let's say, 300 here, we're still only going to sat 100. We can't get past that. So as we mix with our sat of 70 over here, it's still going to be low. We can't buffer up this low saturated hemoglobin here with a very high one here because it doesn't go past 100. So no matter what, we're going to be mixing oxygenated with deoxygenated blood. So getting back to the original question here, you can look at this picture and you can ask, what would it matter if we breathed faster or breathed more, increased our minute ventilation? And you can see it's not going to really do anything. All that would do is refresh this gas here more briskly. And yes, if you're breathing very little or not at all, you'll find that you replace more and more of this oxygen with CO2 because we're continually bringing in new carbon dioxide here. And then this PaO2 is going to drop, and then we'll get hypoxic from that. But as long as we breathe a little bit, or especially if we give you some extra FiO2, that's not going to be a problem. And beyond that point, it's not going to matter. All we can do is breathe very fast to make sure that this PaO2 stays very close to 105, and that will optimize this gradient, but we can't improve this overall situation of shunt. Now, I'm not discounting the possibility of some secondary effects here, such as the hemodynamic effects of tachypnea and things like that. But in kind of an underlying way, ventilation, meaning the bulk convective flow of gas in and out of the lungs, is necessary for oxygenation in most cases, unless you give them a whole lot of FiO2, which is how we see things like apneic oxygenation. But in general, you need to breathe to oxygenate, but breathing more does not make you oxygenate better. That's what I think. You can tell me if I'm wrong. I often am.